Today is the 30th Sunday in Ordinary Time, and the theme of our gospel today is love of God and love of neighbor. I'm beginning to cherish this conflict that is arising between Jesus and the Pharisees. Because through their traps, Jesus teaches us this ever-abiding message, this everlasting word, that when we imitate, when we abide by it, leads to eternal life. Today we read from the 22nd chapter of the Gospel of Matthew. And today's passage is actually the third of the conflicts Jesus had with them. The first was what we read last Sunday, when the Pharisees teamed up with their rivals, the Sadducees, to ask Jesus, is it good to pay taxes to Caesar? The second conflict actually was about resurrection. Why the Pharisees believed in resurrection, the Sadducees do not believe in resurrection. And that is why the Pharisees didn't join the Sadducees to come to ask Jesus about resurrection and about the woman who married 7 brothers and had no child for any. And they asked, at the end, at the resurrection, whose wife would she be? And hearing that Jesus already silenced the Sadducees, now these Pharisees come to ask, and this lawyer asks the question, which is the greatest of all commandments? It is important for us to note that from the 10 commandments, the Pharisees, who were scholars in the law, in the commandment of God, actually got 613 bylaws. And these were too many for the people to remember. So every good scribe always summarizes it for his listeners, for his followers. So it wasn't out of place for them to ask, which is the greatest? So that once you begin to live with that, to live that greatest commandment, once you begin to apply them in your life, then you can say, oh, I have fulfilled all the laws and all the prophets. And Jesus took this man back to the Shema, which is in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 to 5. What every Jew listens to, praise at the rising of the sun. When he wakes up from bed, from sleep, he kneels down to pray. Remember, Shema, listen, O Israel, the Lord your God is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your might and with everything in you. This is what Jesus answered this man. Love of God and love of neighbor. Loving God with everything in you. And then reciprocating that in the love of neighbor. Because these are two sides of the same coin. Love of God is expressed in a relationship attitude with others. And love of others, love of neighbor, becomes a way or something that leads us to love of God. St. John's letter will tell us, you cannot say you love God whom you do not see if you don't love your neighbor. The question we'll be asking ourselves is, what does this actually mean in practical terms? To love God and to love our neighbors. The 10 commandments are divided into 2 unequal parts. The first 3 commandments talk about our relationship with God, our responsibility to God who has loved us so much, what we owe him, how to appreciate him, how to reciprocate his love for us. The second part, beginning from the 4th commandment to the 10th, talks about our relationship with our neighbors as a way of expressing that love we have for God and love we have for them. One thing is that love is not so much about talking. It's not about words. It's about doing. You can tell someone you love him or you love her in words. And if you don't complement that with deeds, then it is useless. You've not loved the person. Yet you can as well show by your actions, your attitudes and behaviors that you love somebody so much without you even saying a word to that person. The person understands. The first reading gives us practical ways of expressing this love to others. Through the prophet Isaiah, God is reminding the people of Israel, and through them reminding us of our relationship, of our responsibility to the less privileged, the widows, the orphans, strangers, whoever they may be. The key word here is need, those that are in need. If we just love and express our gratitude, express our likeness, express our charity to those that like us or to those that we are familiar with, of what benefit is it? It is important to do that, but they shouldn't be the only beneficiaries of our act of love, because love is a decision. I wish you well. I've decided to wish you well. I've decided to work for your good. I've decided to put smiles on your face, and so on and so forth. St. Teresa of Avila, talking about love, says that the fruit of our relationship with God is actually seen in the way we live with others. It's not enough for us to say, I love God, and then maltreat others. If we really love God, as God gives this injunction in the first reading today, it becomes his own way of also loving the poor, loving the orphans, loving the widows, loving the strangers, those you meet, those that you don't even know. That becomes the way of appreciating God's love for you. I so much cherish those qualities of love that St. Paul has given us in his first letter to the Corinthians. And I always tell people, if you really want to think or to evaluate yourself or your love for somebody, then go through them and see. Remove those words, that word love, and put your own name. Maybe Father Luke is not boastful. Father Luke does not take interest in the wrong of another. Father Luke does not do this. Father Luke does that. Father Luke is patient. Put your name, insert your name, and then use it to evaluate yourself. Because it is enough, especially in our society today, for people to claim, I love you, but their actions say a different thing than what their words are saying. In this first reading, this set of people mentioned are actually those that have no say in the society among the Jews, just like in Africa today. The widows are maltreated. The orphans are being neglected. The poor are marginalized. Strangers are not welcomed. But these are those that have special place in the heart of God, even in the ministry of Jesus, in the heart of Jesus. And now God is giving them to us as people that should take care of them. Such love for these people, this set of people, in as much as everybody deserves that love and everybody can give that love. But such love for these people can make us vulnerable. And such vulnerability has actually raised many people in the church to become great people today, that we revere them. For instance, we talk about St. Teresa of Calcutta and many other people that lived their life in charity and hospitality for others. What about you? In the second reading, St. Paul gives us an example of the early Christian community, how they lived and loved one another, living for the good of others. We are the Christians of today, of this generation, and our lives, our response to this injunction of Jesus will be read in the generations to come. How do you make a mark? How do you respond to this? How do you live this in your life? Begin now. They say charity begins at home. But of course, charity does not stop at home. So you can begin now to reach out to these people. You don't need to give them, but also uphold their dignity. If you are moving around and you see beggars, you see homeless people, you see strangers, how do you respond to them? We even maltreat them. But today, Jesus is calling us to love God in our dealings, give God what is his due, worship him as he deserves to be worshipped, honor him as he deserves to be honored, but also uphold the respect you owe others, irrespective of their status, irrespective of where they're coming from, irrespective of their social or political affiliation, but just because they are human beings made in the image and likeness of God. Treat them well, love them, reciprocate God's love for them, for yourself, and then express that in your relationship with them. And that becomes a way of responding to this. So we thank the Pharisees for setting this trap for Jesus Christ, and it has made him to teach us this everlasting message. In the words of St. Teresa of Calcutta, nobody is so poor that he cannot give, and nobody is so rich that he cannot receive. We are all called to become ambassadors of love, love of God in appreciation for your life, and love of others in reciprocation for the love God has shown us. So, may these words find fulfillment in our lives, and may we become humble enough to reciprocate and respond to God's love for us. God bless you.